Yeah, I saw a few weeks back that you were where you used to go on holiday in France, like as a kid. You went back to there. How was that kind of experience for you?
It was amazing, man. I went back to that place, which is in the southwest of France, where I was born, by the way. Actually, I was born very close to that place in Bordeaux. And yeah, it was amazing. It's a place called Euronat, which it's a sick name. I want to use it for one of my next projects in the future. Yeah, it was very moving and interesting. I didn't know up until last minute that I was going to go. I was sort of like stuck in London, and with all the coronavirus thing going on, I wasn't sure if I was going to travel. But last minute, I was like, you know what, fuck it, let's do it. And I went by myself. Amazing experience, man.
Had it changed much?
Not really. I mean, as I said, it's like frozen in time. It's like stuck in the 90s. It's crazy, and I think it's an amazing thing to have nowadays because progress is exponential and things they change so fast. But that place is just, I don't know. It was like taking a time capsule, and everything was the same, exactly the same, and it felt very, very, very good and very grounding.
I feel like now more than ever, things are kind of changing at a really rapid rate. Like this year in particular.
Yeah, it's insane. I can't keep up. So I think using those, things that you have around you to keep yourself grounded, anything can be useful. But going back to the funny thing about that place that I didn't mention on social media, just because I thought it was going to take too much time, and is the fact that that place is actually called a naturist camp. So basically, it's another word for nudist camp. So yeah, it's just a place where a bunch of mostly old people, I would say, go to be free and naked. And so my father has a tennis club there, which is why the reason why I used to spend my holidays there. And yeah, everyone, well, not everyone, but most of the people play tennis just naked.
Does it improve your game?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a bit uncomfortable with the balls, but women, they use bras, and they just, if they have breasts, they just put the balls in between the breasts, and that sounds a bit weird, but yeah.
How often did you used to go there as a kid?
Man, every single summer, my dad is a tennis coach. Just he's been doing that for his entire life. He got that like gig when I was about probably like 6 years old. And the funny thing was that my dad didn't really know how to. I have a sister as well, so he didn't really know how to tell my sister and I that we were gonna spend the holidays in a nudist camp. And so his best solution to that was just not to tell us. And we were driving there, and my dad wasn't saying anything, radio silence. We get to the gate, we go inside. It's quite a, I think it's the biggest nudist camp in Europe, if I'm not wrong.
Really? Man.
Hence why it's called Euronat. And as we got in, my father he wasn't saying a thing. We're driving in his old, not a truck, like his old van, where he carried all of his equipment, and he wasn't saying anything. And first thing I see when I get there is just this old woman just riding her bicycle naked. So you can imagine me as a 7-year-old. I was just like, what? Why is that? And I looked at my dad, and he just started laughing like hysterical laugh. Yeah, that's a memory that I'll remember.
Are there any pieces of music for you that are quite associated with that kind of time in your life when you used to go there in the summer as a kid?
Yeah, man, of course. I would say I used to listen, I think one of my, not the first, but when I was about that age, I used to listen to a lot of radio. And there's a French radio called Skyrock, which is like the number one radio in France, probably still at the minute. And the funny thing is they play rap music mostly and hip hop. And it's called Skyrock. Yeah, especially in that same van that my dad was driving. I would just lock myself up inside that car and just blast music all day long. I could just spend hours just like sitting on the front seat and listening to music. Like all the biggest hits at the moment. I used to listen to a lot of French hip hop, funnily enough. And then I would say mostly my first musical crush was Michael Jackson. I had his CDs, and I would just listen to them inside that same car in Euronat. I could spend like 3 hours, 4 hours, nonstop, just listening, back and forth, back and forth.
Did the hip hop and the Michael Jackson, did they have a different effect on you, or was it very much kind of tapping into the same emotion for you?
Maybe different emotion in the sense that I was a Michael Jackson fan, so I was very sort of emotionally involved with his music. I would connect to it in a different way. I would also read the lyrics at the same time. That's actually how I learned to speak English, just by listening to the music and reading the lyrics. And then, yeah, hip hop. I mean, I think it was a good thing for me because I very quickly sort of drifted between genres. I like both moments equally. But I'd like to say that Michael Jackson was definitely the first thing that I listened to intensely.
Crazy how you started learning English from that as well.
Yeah, man. And also back in the days we had the CDs, so the albums, I would try and actually find the albums and buy them, and you would look at the cover and at the pictures. You had a sort of whole different relationship with the product that you were consuming. And I'm feeling quite lucky in that sense, that I had the opportunity to have CDs and having to wait for music and having to look for it and download it and, I don't know, go through sort of like series of uncomfortable situations at times to get the music as well.
Yeah, it makes it more of an experience. It makes the actual process of then listening to it more rewarding.
Yeah, man. I just remember when I was a kid, first of all, it wasn't cool to listen to Michael Jackson. I don't know if it ever was, maybe in the 80s, but as a 7 or 10-year-old boy in France, it wasn't really like, oh my God, you listen to Michael Jackson, you're the coolest. I had a friend called Anne Fleur, and she had this brother who was like 15 years old, so he was way cooler than us. We were probably about 10 years old. And I was just playing with Anne Fleur, and she was telling me, oh, my brother Guillaume has this CD by Michael Jackson. It's called Bad. And I didn't have that album. And I knew it existed because I could see on the other covers, like those are the Michael Jackson albums. I knew I didn't have that one. And for me, it was like a treasure, I had to get it absolutely. She was like, you can go ask him if you want. And he was in his bedroom. I'm always going to remember he was 15 years old, just like turning into a teenager, hated us for some reason, like when you're a teenager, just,
hey, everything.
Yeah, you don't want to have anything to do with childhood anymore. So I just found the courage, went up to his room, and I got in, and he opened the door, and his room was full of Eminem posters. And I said, sorry, do you have the Michael Jackson album? And he just looked at me and went like, like basically laughed at me. He was like, oh, you want this piece of shit? Yeah, there you go. Basically threw it to me, and I just crawled and grabbed it. And yeah, one of the best days of my life.
It's funny because I feel like Eminem has now become the thing that is probably less cool to listen to.
Yeah.
It's flipped.
I love Eminem, by the way. I got deep into Eminem about 2 years later. Probably had something to learn from him.
I think I went the Marshall Mathers LP. That was the one.
Yeah. It was crazy. Same. Got it on album. And listening to a lot of music inside the car, which is, now that I think of it, it's a good experience. Inside of cars that are not driving. Parked cars.
There's something weird about being in a car as well when it's moving and you're listening to music. It's weird how music can kind of blend into life and it can become part of an experience. Like if you're driving there and you've got the music on, it becomes part of what's happening in that memory. I think that's how I want my music to be experienced mostly. Either driving or walking, or when it becomes part of a sort of like a background music for a moment, because that's how I've consumed it most of my life, and I think it's the right way to do it, When the right song comes in and you're in the car, or even in public transport, yeah, you can experience some nice moments. As a creator, how do you work that out? How do you know if it's going to impact people in that setting? And how do you know it's got that quality about it where it can blend into life? I don't know. I don't ever make music with those thoughts in my mind or those ideas. I never think, oh, I'm going to make music that it's going to sound good when people are having an emotional moment, or I don't know, man. It's just, for me, I try to do my best, and hopefully it is with that intention, but without specifically, you know what I mean? Without specifically thinking, okay, I'm going to do this for this specific moment. It's just, I hope that somehow it will end up through the magic of algorithms to the right ears at the right moment. I remember. Are you familiar with Burial at all? The kind of English artist.
Oh yeah, Burial. Yeah.
I remember reading about him once, and the way that he used to test his music was that he would go out and drive about the city like at 3 a.m. when it was absolutely dead, playing like his music, like the mix he was working on, and just seeing how it kind of felt and how it fitted in with the landscape.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I just read the same, like very similar thing, James Blake saying how he likes to listen to his mixes inside the car, which is a good idea, I think. Yeah.
Did you write any music when you were back in that place you used to go as a kid, like a month or so ago?
Yeah. I have a very small MPK Mini, really cheap one, like a MIDI controller. Took that. I've had it for a few years, and I always take it with me when I travel. I sat down in the same chair where I take breakfast. I took breakfast when I was a kid, and try and write some music. I was working on a collaboration with an artist from California. I think he's from LA. His name is Geneva. He does sort of like lo-fi house music. Really cool.
Yeah, check him out.
Yeah, check him out. Really cool guy. Yeah, we've been working. It's funny because like since lockdown started, I started collaborating way more than before, and I did those sort of like long distance collaborations. I didn't realize how awesome it is. You can just go back and forth, and you can still manage to create nice pieces of art even if you're far away from each other.
It's funny, I noticed the same thing with doing this podcast. I always just used to do this podcast in person, and it was only really through lockdown and the idea that artists weren't going to be touring for the foreseeable future that I was kind of forced to embrace this different way of doing it through Zoom, and it just opens up so many opportunities, and I'm sure the same thing kind of applies to you with the music.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? I think it happened to a lot of people. Like, I think lockdown, of course, brought like many negative sides. One thing that it did, people had to face themselves a little bit and go like, okay, what is it that I really want to do? Or what can I do to just kill time? I mean, at least for me, that's what it felt like. And I believe that the same happened to a few friends of mine. So yeah, I actually became way more productive since the lockdown.
Was that collaboration with BB Sway, was that one of the ones that was done through lockdown as well?
BB Sway, I think we started... No, that was different because we always worked in person. She would always come down to my studio here. I wrote the song back in Barcelona when I was traveling. I went to Barcelona last December. I sort of escaped the deadly December month in London and was lucky enough to go to Barcelona for a month with the purpose of studying for my final exams because I was studying at Goldsmiths University. Yeah, in the meantime, I was making music as well. And one evening, I did the beat on the same little controller. And I knew I wanted a girl to sing on that song. So I just kept it for a few months. And then we linked up with BB Sway. And yeah, it happened. That was the first song we did together, actually.
Did you have an idea of what you wanted it to be? Because the kind of narrative of that song is quite a distinct... kind of girl sings her part of the story and then the guy sings his part of the story and it kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, I know. It ended up being quite cliche, I think, but it's fine. I like cheesy things. I think it's good, always go classic. So
it works though. I mean, if it's true to you and it kind of fits the story and the emotion that you wanted to convey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we just ended up, she just recently broke up with her now ex-girlfriend. I thought it was a good subject to kind of explore. I've had my breakup in the past, so yeah, just ended up being like that, and yeah, I'm quite happy with it.
Who recorded their half of the performance first?
I recorded a hook first by myself, and then when she came, she changed it slightly, and we modified it together. And she laid out her vocals first. Such an amazing singer, and she does it so quickly as well. Half an hour, and she has all the main melodies. She writes the lyrics on the spot, and she does like 100 takes of harmonies and so on, which left me with a lot of editing to do. Yeah, and then I recorded my half by myself, like another day.
What's the energy like in the room when you're with a collaborator like that? How does that impact you when someone is kind of free-flowing in that way?
I mean, it's great, man. It's mostly how I've done music most of my life was with other people around, and I mean, I love doing it by myself, but then when someone else comes in, it's just different. You get on the same vibe. And sometimes you don't as well. We have times... I'm writing a few songs with BB Sway now for potential EP in the future. And we already got about 4 songs down. And sometimes it works great, and some other days, you're just tired and you don't know that it doesn't work. Okay, no matter. I think what matters is just to work. Just do it. But it's always good vibes with her, anyways.
How did you guys connect? What was your first impression of her?
Actually, I met her through my girlfriend. My girlfriend met her at a Vietnamese place, and they just randomly started talking to each other, kept in touch, and I think we first spoke through internet, Instagram, whatever. Yeah, we vibed real. Like, she's a really easy going girl, and it was easy stuff. Like when you get along with someone straight away, especially with music, like if you have that in common, no need for words, we just got along.
How well did you know her when you first heard her music?
I didn't know her at all. First time I spoke to her, we started speaking about music straight away, and I sent her the demo of About You, and we kind of exchanged a few voice messages, and then first time in person was in the studio.
How much of a sense of her personality could you get from her music then when you listened to it if you didn't know her too well?
Not that much, to be honest. I mean, you could tell she was very sparkly and a very, creative person, but she's only started, she only had an EP worth of songs when I met her, and I got to know much more of her when I met her in person, and I also heard the stuff that she's about to release now. It gave me more of a complete idea.
How much stuff did you kind of have of your own when you met her? Did you have had you kind of started to build up a back catalogue of stuff that was going to be Loverground and kind of beats and stuff that you could work on with that?
Oh yeah. I have a lot of music. I'm sitting on a lot of music. When she came to the studio, I showed her quite a lot. I had just released my first single when I met her, so yeah. Not a lot of music.
What kind of emerges then when you're going forward as the thing that's going to be the next single? What kind of separates itself from the rest of the pack if you've got quite a lot of stuff that you're sitting on that needs to be the next thing to come out? What's kind of going through your mind when you're selecting things?
Right now I'm trying to be as smart as I can with what I'm going to release. So this is a solo project and more of a kind of a producer-based music. That's why I released a house track first with no lyrics, nothing, just a very chill down, lo-fi house, happy tune. Yeah, I do know what I'm going to release next, and it's probably going to be a blend of the 2 previous singles that I've released, but different in a way, because it's more, I don't know, deep, I would say, in a way, more emotional, and I'm singing in the track as well. Yes, I want to have the possibility of releasing music, just releasing whatever I want, If I feel like releasing instrumental track, I can do it. If I feel like releasing a collaboration with a very different artist than me, I can do that. And if I want to sing 5 folk acoustic songs, I want to be able to do that. I want to be very versatile. So I think that's kind of the statement that I'm trying to make right now.
I think especially now is the kind of time for that when genre is not really as much of a thing as it used to be. You're in a much more fortunate position as an artist where it's a lot easier to kind of do that.
Yeah.
Than it maybe would have been in the past.
Yeah, you're right. That's why I'm happy that I started releasing music by myself now and not before. I feel much more free and much more secure of who I am as an artist, and feel more confident in releasing any type of music. And that's how people listen to music nowadays. Anyways, you don't know anyone that listens to only hip hop from the 90s. Everyone listens to a lot of music, and I think that's cool. And I think that's the music I want to make.
It makes music that people are creating more interesting as well when you're kind of channeling all these different things into it, and it isn't just kind of restricted to this one area.
If people can recognize your sound despite the fact that it's a different genre, then for me that would be a huge win, even if it's just by the chord progression or the feeling of the song, if they know, oh yeah, I know, this sounds like Loverground. That's what I'm aiming for, really.
You've been in projects before though. You used to front an indie band, right? Was it Smooth Ends?
Yep. Yeah.
When did the progression shift from wanting to kind of write songs in that style to doing something like this? What was kind of motivating that shift?
It was very, very gradual, man. Even when I was back in the band, I was already writing songs by myself. I always knew at some point I wanted to do that. I just didn't have the right format for it. But yeah, Smooth Ends was amazing, just an amazing experience. We didn't know we were an indie band per se. I mean, we were indie in the sense that independent, self-release. We're doing everything by ourselves. Yeah, no, great times. Great times.
How long were you with them for?
We were involved in the project, I would say, for like fully probably like 3 years and a half, maybe a bit more.
So was that a project that started when you moved over to London from France?
So actually, I moved over to London from Argentina. I'm French. I used to live in Buenos Aires. I'm French-Argentine, so my parents are from Argentina.
Ah, right. So did you grow up in France or Argentina then?
I grew up so I was born in France. I've lived there until I was 13 years old. And then I moved to Buenos Aires. I spent my teenage years there and then moved to London when I was like 19.
How did you kind of navigate that?
Man, just, I don't know, go with the flow, you know? And I mean, it was natural at the time. I knew I wanted to change scenarios. I wanted to move outside of Buenos Aires. I knew I wanted to go to London as well because I wanted to make music. I don't know why I had that idea in my mind. I think I was right, by the way. Like, London is a good place to create.
You studied, was it psychology and neuroscience though?
Yes, but that was after the band.
Ah, okay.
So I moved to London and I went to music school. I went to a school that used to be called LCCM, London Centre of Contemporary Music. And that's where I met half of Smooth Ends. Yeah, it was great. I that's how I started. I used to use their studios. They had like recording studios available and no one was using them. I don't know why. Like, no one was using the facilities. So I just went like, you know what, I'm going to record an EP in here. That's where the first Smooth Ends EP was recorded, in LCCM.
Was that the first time you produced something as well?
I didn't produce that one actually. It was a friend that I met in music school, in LCCM. Argentine guy, Dan Nielsen. Very good sound engineer and music producer.
At what point did you start kind of producing your own stuff then?
I always did. I bought my first interface back in Buenos Aires when I was 16. I started playing like guitar quite late. I learned at 14 years old, and then like 2 years later, I bought my first interface and I started recording my own demos, very crappy ones, but that's when I started. Yeah.
What sort of stuff was that like? How would you describe that music you were kind of creating at 16? What was the first kind of thing you gravitated towards?
I did same as now, man. I did a bit of everything, but it was mostly like bedroom pop, you know, very indie. I used to listen to a lot of King Krul. That's right when King Krul started releasing music, and I was heavily influenced by him. I wanted to sound like him. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. There's actually a song that I left on my SoundCloud. It was one of the first songs that I wrote. It's called Sleepless.
I'm going to track it down, yeah.
Yeah, just guitar-based music with a lot of reverb on both the guitar and the vocals.
Kind of lo-fi type stuff.
Yeah, lo-fi type stuff. Also because I didn't know how to record drums or program drums, so I would just tend to do very simple stuff.
Would you say then, from that kind of point where you first started, writing and producing your own stuff, from then to now, do you think you've progressed more as a songwriter or as a producer?
Both. Yeah, both. I mean, like anything else in life, you work and you get better. I think my production got better in the past, especially in the past 2 years. I think I'm a songwriter first and then a producer. I know I said producer-based music, but I wouldn't pride myself in saying I'm an amazing producer. I do what I can. It's not one of my strongest skills. But listen, hey, there's still time.
I did want to ask about the study in neuroscience as well, because that seems quite fascinating. Can you relate that to your music in any way? Like, have you been able to kind of forge a connection there?
Definitely. I think it helped me more, like I'm not talking about the specific subject. I'm just talking about the studying skill. It's something that I didn't have. I think I learned to sit my butt down and really discipline myself to finish things and work on things. And it definitely helped me on my songwriting journey, to even like go back to old songs and finish them. Even when I'm making a beat, like, on a random day, I tackle it differently, I think it really helped me in that sense.
Kind of giving you a little bit of a sense of routine, almost.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's a lesson that took a long time to learn, but routine is essential. It's so important. Routine and discipline, are two things that I I really try to maintain in my life because they're very beneficial, man. And even like I think the idea of the creative mind, the artist, the bohemian that just comes up with great ideas and writes. I mean, it might be true for some people, but I think it's a very small minority. I think my girlfriend was telling me the other day. I think it's Roald Dahl that said something. I don't remember the quote, but something along the lines that creativity has to catch you in the act. He has to catch you working at your desk. And for me, at least, it turned out to be true.
Was the kind of the idea of the bohemian and someone who just comes up with those great ideas, was that something you kind of had as a teenager and then that kind of slipped away when you started to work on music more?
Yeah, definitely, man. Like I would look up to people like, Kurt Cobain or like Pete Doherty, very like destructive, auto-destructive souls that just create and suffer. And then I realized like that's not the kind of life that I want to live at all.
What age were you when that kind of realization hit?
Oh man, pretty recent, I would say. Around the time when Smooth Ends ended, I guess. I probably still had that. You're being sold that fantasy as well, that things will happen for you, just out of the blue. People will recognize your talent. You'll be picked up by that one guy in this industry that will see the potential that you have. And I don't think that's true at all. I think you have to make it happen for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I think that self-destructive kind of edge you speak about with those people like Pete Doherty and Kurt Cobain, that does come with a romance as well, though. Like there is something kind of slightly romantic
absolutely. I used to romanticize that 100%. I wanted to be like those guys, emulate them in many ways. But yes, I that's not the path that I want to take.
Interesting what you said about kind of like trying to to emulate them. Were you ever like conscious of being self-destructive, or was that never something you really strayed too close toward?
I don't know if maybe. When I say emulate them, I would probably try and, copy them in a very basic teenage way, like trying to dress like them or talk like them or just sound like them. Or even like, well, maybe, like picking up smoking and drinking and that. I always had red flags in my life when that happened, if I went down the destructive path, immediately something happened that would tell me like, you probably gotta stop here, buddy,
Have you noticed your approach to like songwriting change as a result of that realization and that kind of now that you've stopped trying to emulate that, how has that impacted your songwriting and your creativity?
It has impacted in the way that I pretty much take it as work, which was a word that I used to fear in the past. Now I'm happy with it, it's like, it's my job, it's my work. I want to do this. I want to sit down every day and trying to do this as much as possible. It has changed in that way,
When it comes back to studying, psychology and neuroscience as well, did you ever look at what impact listening to music has upon your brain?
No. Reason being is, I mean, of course, I've heard of it, I've studied it a little bit, but I never went in depth in that subject because I wanted to take the two disciplines apart in a way. I wanted to make sure there are two different things in my life. I don't want to be a music therapist, or one thing that I do remember and that I've applied in my life is first year of psychology and neuroscience. We looked briefly at something called, have you heard of binaural beats?
I've not, no.
They're just sounds that they use in like for meditation, like ambient music tracks. And what they do is they send you have to listen to them with headphones, and they send two different frequencies in each ear. And what your brain does is kind of balance those two sounds and make them go into one symphony, so that your left and right hemisphere kind of blend together and vibrate in the same frequency, if that makes sense.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I don't know if it's very well backed up by evidence, but from a personal experience, it seems to work a lot. Like I use them a lot to meditate. I don't know, that's what they do. They entrain your brain to a certain frequency. So like, let's say you can record the electrical activity in your brain, and when you're doing something, like if you're sleeping, your brain will vibrate to a certain frequency, or when you're active studying, alpha waves, theta waves, deep sleep, I think it's delta waves, and so on. There's a certain frequency that occurs when you're in a meditative state, and you can apparently use those sounds to entrain your brain to a meditative state. Yeah.
Do you meditate quite often then?
Yes, it's always been a part of my life. I tried to make it part of my routine, successfully at times, not so good at other times. But recently I've managed to do it every day, at least for half an hour. It makes a big difference. I really recommend it.
When you say you meditate for half an hour, is that half an hour when you're in that deep state, or is that half an hour including the kind of getting to that point and then coming out of it as well?
Yeah, it's half an hour including getting to that point. So on some days, I try to do it either first thing when I wake up or last thing before I go to bed. Sometimes you get into that state very quickly, and some other times it's a bit more difficult. We're so overloaded with sensory information that, at least in my personal experience, I find myself just being overwhelmed. Like my brain is like but yeah, usually half an hour I try to.
What's it like when you finish doing that and that kind of period directly after that? How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel very good. I feel relaxed. It has so many benefits that I don't know where to start. It's, even if you want to use it in the practical sense, just to improve your attention, your memory, anything, it's great. For me, it's more the case of making the vibe right. Taking care of yourself first. Make sure you're in the right state of mind to start your day or to go to bed. It's just, you kind of hit the reset button.
Well, I mean, when it comes to something like memory, what sort of an impact has it had on that? And then how does that fit into music? Because memory is such kind of a pivotal part of creating music.
For me, I have a very bad memory, so I don't know. I'm starting from a rough baseline, but I don't know if it makes a big difference to me in that sense. But it does make me more aware and more present and more in touch with my emotions, and that definitely can have an impact when it comes to making music.
Is music something that's done that for you as well, though? Has kind of telling these emotions in that creative...
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the main reason why I make music, because it gets me in that flow state. And I think it's what we're all chasing, that precise moment where you're just fully involved in what you're doing and you lose the sense of time. You're just, I don't know, you turn off that front side of your brain, the prefrontal cortex that, makes you think about the future and ruminate about the past. That just stops, and when you get there, it's amazing. I think that's somehow what we all chase.
How long can you kind of sustain that period for when you're in that zone?
To be honest with you, not very long, because I realized, so like, let's say the other day I got back home quite late and I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and try and make a song, and I got into that state straight away. It's just amazing when it happens. Like I lay down everything, just the chords, the beat, the melody in the blink of an eye. And when you get in that creative moment, it's just the best ride possible, I think. But I did the entire track in probably 25 minutes. After that, you can feel it. It's almost like a roller coaster ride, You can feel it descending, and then you go to the more boring side of it, which is like, oh, my vocal has too much reverb. I should probably change that drum sound. I should probably tweak the bass line, and so on and so on. That's not as fun as the first half.
That what you were describing there, though, where you kind of managed to get into it straight away, and that song came together in about like 25 minutes or so. Was that a similar process for the debut single? Did it? Because it kind of came together over an afternoon or so, did it?
Exact same. I was writing my dissertation for my degree, and I was taking a break, non-allowed break. Those things you go like, okay, I'm just gonna do a beat real quick, but I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing that. I even did it. This is gonna sound a bit sad for music lovers out there, but I didn't even use my keyboard. I just used the computer keyboard. Played it with the keys of my Mac. I wrote that song in it was quick, like 15 minutes. I kept it there on my laptop. I think like 2 days later I played it again, and I was like, yeah, this is good. I should release it. I knew I wanted to release songs. I didn't know what to start with, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll just release that track. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I want this to be carefree and very spontaneous, so I should probably kick it off with this tune.
And it worked. It did well.
Yeah, it worked. It did fairly well for first single, I think. Yeah, I wasn't expecting a lot, to be honest. I had no expectations whatsoever other than putting it out there and having my friends enjoy it.
So did that song change at all from, the kind of the first structure that was put together that afternoon to the final master, or did it kind of stay?
Nope, didn't change.
Not at all.
At all. No, I didn't. I just mix it a little bit, but I had the structure laid out from the very beginning. It was one of those lucky ones,
How often does that happen? What's your kind of average work time on a song?
It really depends. Like the next single that's gonna come out now took me years to finish. It's now done. It took me a long time. So I think, to be honest with you, I wrote the first demo of that track in like late 2017. So that's a long time. It's funny, actually, the track is called Be Patient. And that took a very long time. Like, I did a first demo and then I switched it around. Then I got rid of half of the song. I did a different bass line. I recorded vocals once, then I lost the vocals. I had to do them again. It was a very, very long song to make. I had a friend record backing vocals one day randomly. Then I had a friend of mine to mix it. I didn't like it so much. I tried with another producer and so on. It was sort of a collaborative track in that sense because a lot of people contributed to the final sound.
I'm fascinated by the fact that with that taking 2.5 years or so to put together, obviously over that period, we were speaking earlier about like some of the changes you kind of gone through in the last few years. You obviously changed a lot over a couple of years. How does that internal change that you go through as a person then impact the song that you spent making over those kind of 2-3 years?
Man, a lot. It's a very important track for me because I wrote it a long time ago and I wrote the lyrics. I'm not going to spoil it, but I think now that I look back into it, it's sort of a letter to my future self. So the track, it's called Be Patient. The lyrics are almost like a series of advice for a better life that I'm giving myself, Sort of like almost full circle now. And I'm still waiting to release it. I don't know when the release date is going to be. But yeah, it's a very, very important track for me. And I think to date, it's my best one. I think I don't want to speak too much, but yeah.
Now that you are at a place, a few years on from it, and what you're speaking there about how it being, like a letter to your future self, what would you say about that advice? How accurate was that advice? Was it good advice?
Yeah, I mean, it's good advice, and it's still things that I'm working on and stuff that I'm still trying to find the right answers. But I think the initial creative spark was pretty accurate. I talk about being a man and just being honest and being patient, just like trusting yourself, I guess.
Are those the kind of things that you live your life by? Like, are there other mantras as well? Is that you kind of?
I try to, man. It's not easy, I think it's an ongoing process. But first of all, the track is called Be Patient, and I could release it tomorrow, but I feel like it's not the right time yet. So I will wait until the time feels right. And then being honest, definitely, I think that's probably the moral value that I hold the highest. I think it's important being true to yourself in order to be true to others as well. And I think it's a value that needs recalling. I think we need to remember. Like, I was taking the tube today and I was looking at the signs. I feel like nowadays there's a big emphasis on being nice, which is good. I think you should be nice. But I think it's more important to be honest, because sometimes you have to risk not being nice in order to be honest,
Yeah, I think being nice has got the world in quite a lot of trouble in recent years.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. And also, most of the times it's being nice is lacking realness, You choose to be nice rather than have meaningful connections or conversations or interactions with others. I'm not very keen on it. I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird one.
Does being a musician makes that easier though? Because when you're expressing yourself in music and making yourself vulnerable in this place and being completely honest, does it then make it easier to be honest in conversations with people outside of it, or does it have any impact on that at all?
Yeah, probably the other way around. I think it starts by the individual first. So like, I feel like if I get to be more honest in my personal life and in my relationships, then I get the chance to have more meaningful and more honest songs, But maybe, hopefully it translates in the music as well, I don't know. I guess if you make a very honest and personal song, then it will be received in the same way. And it's a very sort of new agey concept, but I do believe in like vibrations and energies, and I think that's what music is in the end. You know, it's a vibration. And the song and the music that I vibe to usually, like, it's very, not always, but it's like personal, like honest music. Like as I said before, even when I was a teenager, King Cruel and those sort of artists, like you can tell is coming straight from their soul, no filter whatsoever. Hopefully that's what helps you be more recognizable.